Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's been a great vacation. I've been in Greece last week, which is why there wasn't a video last Sunday, but I'm even more excited to start over and to, start a new project. And this week I have something super excited, a bit more couture than I usually do. It's kind of similar to the project that I've done before my vacation, but I'm in the cute little dress fever right now. So we're gonna continue with another beautiful summer dress, a little bit more couture. I made a small sketch right here. As you can see here, the colors don't really match, but that is the idea. I want to have like some sort of bodice, corset bodice kind of type thing that goes to about the middle of the bust, and then more like a jersey top kind of on top, and then a puffy tulle skirt. And you might wonder what this pattern is on the fabric, and I found the most amazing fabric ever. Look at this. So this is a beautifully embroidered tulle. It's actually nylon tulle, so I'm super excited to use this. I only have a meter. I'm gonna see what I can do with this. So let's see how this works out, especially because I want to cover the bodice obviously in this, and then also the skirt. So maybe we're gonna have to do some sort of tiered look or something similar to that, because I want to gather this around the waist, and maybe there is not enough for this. But I also have another tulle that I'm gonna use to puff up the dress, or like the skirt part, and also for the jersey part I have this beautiful grayish purple jersey, which is sort of a rib, but it's not really. I'm not quite sure how this is called, but it's basically a jersey that I will be using to make a top. And for that, we're actually going to use the pattern of just a simple nude top that I have here in my closet, and I'm just gonna do it until around the waist. Just take the pattern off of this piece and remake it in my purple fabric. And then I also will be using a pattern that I already made. I was thinking about using the corset top, the pink one, the dusty pink one. I'm gonna put a picture right here so you can see what I mean. But it's basically the perfect shape. I'm just gonna cut it around the bust right here, bust line, and then we can use it. I'm actually gonna make a mock-up really quick and put it on top of this piece. So I'm gonna see you in just a second. Okay, so this right here is what we can work with. As you can see, I just made the upper part of my top that I was talking about, and now I can use this, like put in the shape of the bodice basically. So I am thinking about kind of drastically shorten this bodice in a straight way, maybe just here. So just tiny bit below the bust point or the apex point. And then I'll have to, in the pattern, smooth everything out so that it is actually a straight line, as I'm working on a round surface. Straight is not straight in this case, so if I were to just continue this line in a straight way, it probably looks crooked from the front or from wherever. So, or like, I want to be sure that from the front at least it looks like a nice curve. So I'm going to just draw from a front view and continue the line to the back. So now it makes like a small slope towards the waistline, and it also does that from the side view, as you can see right here, but it looks quite nice from the front. And now I can, ease this line into a point right here. I think I want to have this not too low, but I also don't want to cover the top underneath. So I'm just gonna go like, say, 5 centimeters below the bust line, like this, and then connect these two lines in a nice way together. And we're gonna smooth that out later on the paper pattern when I'm doing it. And now I can see if I want to add any more dividing seams. I think in my drawing I also have a center front seam, and also I want to shorten this bodice a tiny bit. At the moment it's laying, I think, on the waistline, more or less, so a tiny bit longer, but I also have seam allowance on the bottom, which I would have not needed, but anyways. But I think I'm gonna shorten this to be somewhat around the waistline. I also don't want the bodice to go downwards, so I'm gonna try to draw kind of straight line all around. And then also another thing that I want to do is make this bodice a tiny bit smaller. Not because I want to cinch in anything, but this feels like it's a tiny bit too big. And since the top that I made from this pattern was not stiffened up by boning or anything like that, it just was fabric and interlining or interfacing, I think. This was totally fine for that fit, but for this, as I really want to make a boned bodice, I want to make this a tiny bit smaller. So what I'm going to do is just draw in the dividing lines that are already put into this bodice. I think I'm gonna do a kind of diagonal line here. I think that just looks better. And then draw another line next to it so that I will cinch it in a tiny bit by 5 millimeters or so. And then here on my side seam, I'm gonna do the same. So all in all, don't want to make it too tiny, but I think maybe 1.5 centimeters. And up here at the apex point, since this corset, bodice, whatever, won't have anything on top here, this will probably, if I don't make a small clip or dart in there, will just open up on top. So it would look weird. And that's why I will be doing a small, tiny dart here so that it just goes towards the body. And then I can just make underneath the bust, also make the fabric be tighter together, something like that. I think that's all of the dividing lines. I don't need that many dividing seams, honestly, because I'm using the embroidered fabric and I don't want to destroy the picture of the embroidery too much. So I only use the ones that I need to. This one is also not needed, but maybe I'm just gonna take out a tiny bit of fabric and I'll put the pattern pieces together so there is no seam right here. So I'm just gonna have 2 seams, side seams, and then the front dividing seam. And that should be all, I think. And then I can put boning wherever I need it. Because I'm gonna put a zipper right here for, you know, the easiest and most comfortable way of putting on this dress. So I'm also gonna add a boning right here so that it just stays straight and the zipper doesn't bubble up. Yeah, but that's it. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. And now I can make a pattern out of it. I will show you how I take the pattern from this piece right here. And the skirt is just a paddle, probably 50 centimeters broad. And then, you know, selvage to selvage, gather it up. I have taken the top down and I marked where my waistline was while I had it on my bust. And this is where I'm going to cut the pattern piece, basically, obviously not the top, but the pattern piece. And I'm gonna have a center back seam, as I said before. I'm gonna have a zipper there. So I put it basically center front, center back, folded it that way. I'm not gonna have any side seam because you can just cut this out of you know, your fabric in one go. I made sure that this fabric is similar to the t-shirt fabric, so this is a double stretch in both directions, just the same way as this is one. This here is way more stretchy than my fabric, but it shouldn't be a problem as I know how this fits on my body and it's not too tight, it's like kind of loose actually. So this should be good for my fabric. You always have to check if you're using jersey or any knit fabric, anything elastic, that it is somewhat the similar elasticity than whatever, you know, the person who made it, the pattern or whatever, used, or whatever top you're taking it from, the pattern itself, so that you have a comparison. You can't use a top that is way more stretchy if your fabric is not stretchy. It just doesn't work. So you always have to make sure that it's somewhat comparable. Or if it isn't, then you just can't use this specific fabric for whatever project you are making. Also with my patterns, if I am making a pattern for a specific elasticity, either it's knit or my fabric just has a little bit of stretch to it, I always make sure to either put the elasticity in percentage that you have to calculate yourself. I made a video about that. You can check it out here, or like it's part of a video where I am talking about elasticity. You can check it out here. Or you need to match the percentage of elastin that is in the fabric. So, for example, 97% cotton, 3% elastin. That's super important because otherwise the pattern won't fit. So the same thing goes here. You need to have some sort of elastic garment. This right here, I'm actually, for you guys, going to make a elasticity check, and I can tell you exactly what the elasticity of this fabric is. So what you need for that is 10 centimeters of your fabric. Okay, so this is 10 centimeters, as you can see right here, and now you're going to stretch it and see how much more centimeters it stretches to. So this right here stretches to 16 centimeters, or 15 centimeters, let's say. That's not too overstretched. So this right here has an elasticity of 50% because it stretches 5 centimeters more to 15 centimeters instead of the default 10 centimeters without being stretched. So that's 50% that I am using at the moment. This piece right here has way more stretch because this is, you know, like a nylon microfiber or whatever piece. So like, you know, this stretches beyond anything. But it should be fine, as I mentioned before. I know how it fits on my body and it's not too tight. So what I'm going to do here is actually taking this, what I marked right here, and putting it onto a pattern paper, or in my case, I'm just taking a photo and putting it onto Illustrator and make a pattern out of it, just as I am doing my usual pattern digitizing. If you're interested in how I do that, I also made a video about that, so you can check it out here. Yeah, and I'll be back with the finished pattern. Okay, I've prepared all of the pieces that I will be using. I decided to go for this beautiful embroidered tulle that I already mentioned. Then I want to have this pine green satin as the layer underneath, shining through. I will have an interlining, which is just this very stiff denim fabric that I have. It's actually canvas, it's not a denim fabric. But while I was cutting it out, I also really liked this. So I wasn't really sure which one of the two I should actually use as the under fabric, I guess, for the tulle. But I decided to stay with my original plan and go for the satin. So this will just be my interlining. It just also happens to be green. For the interlining, you just need to use any stiff cotton, probably is the best option, material that you have at hand. You can also use your mock-up fabric if it is a stiffer material. Just make sure that it's not too thick, that it's not with elastin, and you know, that it's not a special fabric or whatever, because this will be covered up, you won't see it. And then also I have my lining prepared. This is just the pine green satin that I'm also using as the underlayer. And I figured the satin would be a great lining as well, as it has, you know, all of the properties that lining should have, which means like it's slippery and it's comfortable. So this is my lining. This is my outer bodice, and for making a bodice that is boned as well with these many different layers, the first thing that you want to do, as per usual, if you've seen some of my other videos, the one I made last time is linked up here, you can check it out as well. I also made a boned bodice. I am also talking about this. You want to put all of these fabrics, sew them all together so that they act as one fabric layer. And you do that by just stitching into the seam allowance all around every pattern piece before you can sew the bodice together. That's what I will be doing right now, and I'll be back once that's done. Okay, so these are the pieces that I have prepared, and we're just gonna sew them together. So just put right sides together and stitch at 1 centimeter. I'm going to use my beloved Originally boning, which is stitchable boning. I made a few reels about that. You can check that out on my Instagram channel, which you should follow me on there actually, because I am making so many tips and tricks and reels and stuff about that. So if you want to, give me a follow there. Anyways, I will be sewing these pieces together so that they make one whole bodice. And once done with that, we're going to continue with the boning itself. Okay, let's iron the seam allowances open. And I will also try to cut a few of these things off because they're just gonna be bulky and we don't really need them. Okay, next up I'm going to iron everything open, so all of the seam allowances. We can now continue to put our boning in there. I'm going to use black Ridgeline boning, which is the stitchable kind. Mine is 6 millimeters wide, and I'm going to measure boning that is exactly as wide as the height of the seams, and make sure to not put boning into the seam allowance. Really important. And now I can continue to put these in. I saw on Insta a reel where a person put tape around the edges, which I thought was a really smart idea, just because it makes it impossible to poke through. Like this. Something like this. And I'm gonna do that to top and bottom of the boning pieces. So the bodice is done for now. We're going to make the lining now. The lining is almost the same pattern pieces, not quite, so it's a bit more tiny, but they have the same parts. I'm just gonna put the lining together just as the outer bodice, and then I will be back. Okay, now the lining is done as well. I also ironed the seam allowance open, and I will be putting, usually I would put right sides together and then you know, have a neat edge on top, but for this bodice I wanted to make a bias binding edge on top and bottom, so I don't really need to do that. I will just put wrong sides together and sew all around the bodice to fix these two layers together. And then once I'm done with that, I will put this bias binding, which is just a strip 3 centimeters wide. It's cut on a 45-degree angle. That's why it's a tiny bit stretchy, which is nice for things like this. And I will put that face down, or like right sides together, to fold it over and then to have a neat edge on top here. And I think that's gonna look really, really nice. All of the white thread that you can see right here, that will be visible in the very end, I'm just gonna take out, so you know, don't worry about that. But first of all, we're gonna put lining and outer fabric layer together, wrong sides, and I'm gonna stitch into the seam allowance as well, so basically do another one of these wide stitches. So I actually decided to give this bodice some sort of embroidery. I used my domestic machine for that, and also a contrasting thread color. I also embroidered the last boning channel that I had here. And while I was doing that, I was thinking a bit about how the dress will end up looking once the skirt is on and once the top and so on is on. And I came to the conclusion that it would be the best and, yeah, frankly also the most versatile way to just make a bodice out of this that you can lace up in the back. So I will add just like some sort of cover right here and then put eyelets in here and, you know, call it a day, and have this as some sort of under bust bodice or like half bust bodice. I'm not sure how to call this because it only covers half of the bust. And then just make a separate garment, like a separate dress with the jersey and then the skirt on it and stuff, and then you're just gonna put this on top and lace it in the back. I think that's the easiest way. And yeah, and then you can also use this bodice right here for other purposes, which I think is also really nice. So I'm just gonna cut off a piece and sew it on here. I will have everything obviously ready in the pattern that you can go get at the link down in the description below and in the pinned comment, so you won't have to do any of these changes that I am doing right here. But you know, I just wanted to let you know that this is my progress and that I changed my mind and that I am going to finish it this way. Okay, so I finished the underbust bodice and I made it a lace up. I put a gold eyelets in here and used this yellow satin tape that I had laying around. I'm not quite sure if I like the width of this. Maybe I should have just sewn it in half. Not sure if I'm gonna relace this with only half of this strip, you know, like this. But that's what I was doing so far, and the bodice is done for now. And we can continue with the jersey top and then also with the skirt part and then put everything together, and I'm super excited. So let's go. Okay, so the corset is done now, and next up is the body, the jersey part, I guess, up here. And I already prepared a little something because I wasn't sure on how to actually manufacture the neckline. So I did a few tryout pieces right here. I started with this one where I just used a 3 centimeter strip like this and made more or less a facing on the other side. Didn't quite like it because it is quite bulky and it makes the jersey flare out, which is exactly the opposite of what I was trying to achieve, because I want this neckline to, you know, be tight on the body. So you want to have something that helps this and not going against this, what this was doing. So I just pulled on the strip a bit better and also not left it completely on the wrong side of the fabric, but made a binding right here. I also tried a few more stitches. This worked better, but it was still kind of bulking outwards. This is the same thing with a zigzag stitch. And then I was trying these two here, where I used an elastic, which is way more elastic than these here. These are a tiny bit elastic, but this technique makes the fabric lose its elasticity quite a lot. So I was like, maybe an elastic as a facing is better. So I was doing this, and then I also tried out this stitch right here, which I didn't really like because as it is elastic, it just goes together and it's not the same look as what I have on the corset. as you can see right here, I tried to mimic this embroidery kind of stitch. So that was this the same setting, but this one is just way more pulled together as it is elastic, and if I stretch it out the way that I sewed it, basically it looks the same, and it's just not the same when it's not stretched out. So I wasn't happy with that either, but the technique with the elastic works really, really well. So that is what I went with in this piece right here. I just figured that I wanted to check out how I'm gonna do this corner, because this is also gonna go into the straps here at this corner. So I was like, where do I want the jersey to be body tight? Of course, here in the neckline. This is the most important thing. If it's not tight to the body at the neckline right here, the garment is not wearable, in my opinion. So I put the elastic on this corner right there, and then here I used these techniques here where I was just using a 3 centimeter strap and putting it basically like, you know, a binding. So I put 5 millimeters inwards on both sides and then flipped it on top of itself, and then top stitched it with a zigzag stitch. And this is what I was doing right here. I was pulling it quite tightly so that it wouldn't do this here. And it worked out quite fine, I would say. I also went out to form a strap on this side here, and yeah, the bar tag is not needed. That was unnecessary. I was just not working nice enough because I didn't catch the fabric here. So that is something that I need to look out for. And I think this is the best option to go with, that we're going to do elastic on this here and then the bound edge on this right here. So what we need for that is just an elastic that, you know, has a bit less than the length of this right here. I am just using elastic for binding. It has a shiny side and a non-shiny side. I will be using the non-shiny side because I just like it better. So I will be using somewhat of this length, which is about 30 centimeters, obviously from size to size, and from elastic binding to elastic binding it differs, but I would suggest between 20 and 40 centimeters of elastic binding you will need. And then you're just gonna cut out a few strips of 3 centimeter wide binding out of the same fabric right here. And you're gonna use that for the straps and then also for this side right here. I am going to use straps that measure 36 centimeters. That's just what I measure from the top, and that fits fine. So I guess that will be the measurement for me. It's always best practice to just measure it on yourself, or if you have a top that is similar to that I was showing, you just measure the length of the straps on there and you should be fine. You can always make it tighter, so you rather go a bit bigger than too small, as we're just gonna bar tag the strap on somewhere here where the notch is, so you can always undo that and make it tighter. And yeah, that's all. So we're going to start with the neckline here in the middle. So I'm gonna put the right side of the binding, which is in my case the non-shiny side, onto the right side of the fabric, and then just do a zigzag stitch right here into like the 1/2 of the binding, so that I can then turn it onto the wrong side of the fabric and it stretches and, you know, makes it tighter. So this is what it looks like. I also made a small bar tag right here. So if you put the right sides together, fold it in half, you will find that here in the center front, there is gonna be like this weird nose that goes out, and you just want to put a bar tag that continues on the fold of the center front, because otherwise it just does a weird like bulking thing. So if you put a bar tag right here continuing on the center front, it will sit nicely once you unfold it here. Otherwise it's just gonna be standing outside, like it's gonna flare up, something like that. Not sure how to say that. But you want to put this bar tag in, and this is what it looks like. It's rolling still, but that's fine, because once we put it on the body, it's stretched out anyways. And we can continue on with this side right here. And I have the strip here. So we're gonna use that and start here in the center back and have a zigzag that just goes 5 millimeters right at the corner here. And then once we reach here, this corner, we're gonna go out and up and basically do this right here. So flip 5 millimeters inwards. We're gonna prepare that in a second as well. And then fold that on top of itself, and then we're gonna stitch right here. I'm gonna use a small zigzag for that. I think 2 or 3 in my settings, so it just looks a bit neater. But we can go ahead and prepare this piece, and then we can also, once we've sewn it onto the jersey piece, we can measure the 36 centimeters or whatever your measurement is gonna end up being, and prepare the strap and cut it already, so that we don't have, you know, to measure while we're on the machine or while the piece is under the machine. Okay, and then we're gonna put this piece or right sides onto the top and sew like on top of where the fold starts. So the fold is right here, and we're gonna sew here 5 millimeters zigzag up until here. Okay, so as you can see, it is a tight fit. It pulls it together, which is a good thing. Now we can measure our 36 centimeters. Right here. And then we're going to prepare our fabric right here and iron the seam allowance into the binding piece. And here in the corner, I also want to make sure that this will be a nice binding edge right here. So if you have anything bulking out here, you need to cut this down, as I did with the excess elastic that I used to pull the beginning of the seam. You want to cut that off. And now you can see it's a really nice fit, and we can go ahead and sew this from one of the 2 sides. Okay, so the top is also done for now. I ended up shortening the straps to around 33 millimeters, and I also repositioned the straps to more towards the center back, just because this was a really weird placement. All of that will be, of course, changed and you know, finished for you guys in the pattern that you can get down below, so you won't have to do any of these changes. My pattern will have everything already done for you, and this is basically what it's going to end up looking like. And I think the colors really look amazing together, that we have like this really dusty purple and then this amazing pine green with these bright colors on it. And I hope that it's gonna look awesome together, because it already does when you put it like this. And then with the skirt, I bet it's gonna be amazing. Of course, since I decided to make the bodice, or like the corset here, separate from the dress, you can, you know, put this on anything that you want, and you should be fine. But I'm really excited about how this already looks, and we can continue now with the skirt. The skirt is gonna be interesting because I have many different layers prepared already. I cut out 3 of the tulle, 1 of the amazing embroidered fabric, and 1 of the satin. This is my lining, this is the upper layer, and the tulle is just for fluff. So add as many layers of tulle as you want. It's just gonna get fluffier or less fluffy. We're gonna do exactly what we've been doing for the skirts for a long time now. We're gonna ruffle these to fit the waist of, not this time the top, because this is elastic. So this is not your waist measurement, it is less than that. So you should fit it to whatever your waist is. In my case, I'm gonna fit it to about 64, 65 centimeters. You better take your measurement on yourself, or you can rely on the size chart that I have for every pattern if you want to do that. But best practice is to just measure your waist and then gather to fit your waist. I will put the tulle together to have one panel of tulle and then gather that to fit my waist. And for these I don't have to do that, I just will fit this the gathered pieces to my waist. And we're gonna go from there. Leave the center back open, and then we're gonna arrange the layers, and it should look really, really nice. Okay, just to test this out, because I wasn't sure if I like the skirt or not, and I decided that I did not like the skirt, because I only have one panel of the lace. I wasn't sure if it was enough to puff up the skirt, because, you know, if you only have a certain amount in a rectangle, it usually just doesn't stand nicely. So if you only have one panel, so 140 in total, gathered in the top, it just doesn't look good here in the bottom. So that was my fear, but I didn't have enough fabric left, which is why I decided to actually cut off 17 centimeters here in the hem and use the remaining embroidery that I still had, which just happened to be 35 centimeters, and cut off these panels right here. These are 3 panels that are 17 centimeters, and I'm just gonna ruffle them and put them on the hem right here, and just hope that this makes the dress look really, really nice. I am also going to add another panel of satin underneath just to puff it up more as well. And I have the tulle down here, which I used 3 panels for. So that in total I think will look quite nicely. This is what it looks like at the moment. I put the bodice on here to check out the look and the fit and everything, and once the gathering and the skirts and everything is done, we can continue to put the skirts onto the top. Or what I was also thinking about, maybe I'm just gonna make a separate skirt as well and hem the top, and then have 3 pieces that you can put it on separately or to form this dress. Not quite sure yet. I'm going to keep you updated. So let's put these together and ruffle them up and put them on the bottom of the skirt. Okay, so now I'm gathering this to fit the hem of my dress. And I'm doing this, by the way, by hand, because I found with all of these sequences and, you know, the embroidery and everything on there, it's quite hard to do that with my foot. So I'm just doing it by hand just to be sure. So I'm just gonna simply put right sides together here and sew these 2 pieces together so that this gathered piece here fits perfectly onto the hem of the skirt. If not, I'm just gonna regather while sewing. So I'm just gonna sew regularly just here, and since this is tulle, it's not gonna fray, so we should be fine. So I'm not quite sure yet what I want to do with all of these layers. So as I said before, I have the embroidery layer, the satin layer, and then in the very middle, or like on the inside, I have the tulle layer. And I hope that it's going to generate enough puff for the skirt. I'm wondering what I should do, because I was thinking about just putting it onto the top and, you know, call it a day. So for that, I want all of these layers to be combined at the waistline and have basically one fabric to work with, because this is quite difficult to work with as it's so puffy. I'm just gonna pin these together and then stitch across this so that I have one layer to work with. Okay, this should be good. And now I am going to just put a stitch over all 3 layers to fix them together to one layer, and I'm gonna stitch into the seam allowance as per usual. I changed my mind. I'm not going to make this a separate skirt because I was not thinking about something. The top right here, this is pretty cropped, but it's a double stretch. So because it is cropped and it's stretchy, it's gonna not sit where I want it to sit. It's not gonna stay at the waistline, it's just gonna go up and up and up, and we don't want that. So just to have like a counterweight, basically, I need to put the skirt onto the waistline, or at least in my mind, I need to put it there. Just so that it doesn't go up the top. And then I'm gonna have a zipper, combined zipper in the very end, or like I'm gonna have a combined zipper of top and skirt in the center back, and just go by my original plan. So I am going to put right sides together of top and skirt. I'm gonna find the center front first of the skirt, and then match that up with my center front notch in my top and pin these together. And then I'm just gonna pull the top to fit the waist of the skirt. Just put a couple of pins in, and the inside here I'm just going to clean up with a bias binding edge. That sounds to me like the most suitable way. Okay, so I'll be back with this put together because I don't have my camera right here with my domestic machine. I'll have it over there with my industrial machine, but I'm just putting these two together with a zigzag stitch. And for the binding, I'm just going to use the bias binding that I cut out of the satin and put it right sides onto the tulle and stitch here and then fold it up into here like this. And then I have a nice clean edge that looks somewhat like this. So, zipper time. I'm putting in a invisible zipper into the center back. This one is shortened to 25 centimeters, and this is, you know, you've seen me done it plenty of times before. I'm just going to open my zipper and then put right sides together, match up the edge up here with the elastic stopper with the edge of my neckline, so that it's gonna have an even corner up there in the end. I'm not gonna pull anything, especially here on the knit fabric. If I am pulling anything, then rather on the zipper band than on the jersey, because if you do it the other way around, your jersey might wrinkle up. We want to avoid that, so if anything, pull on the zipper band. And then here we're gonna make one layer out of this. I used the selvage edge here as, you know, the edge of the center back, but this has always these, you know, puncturing points where the fabric was put on the weaving machine. So I kind of want to, at least for the satin, you know, move the selvage edge out a bit and then cut it off for when I'm gonna put the satin pieces together in the very end. So I'm kind of gonna do this. If you worked neatly, you shouldn't even have that problem, because then you cut off the selvage edge. And I'm going to use my invisible zipper foot and put this zipper in. And for the other side, I close the zipper, and I will be using needles to mark some points that I want to match up. For example, this seam right here. And then I'm also gonna mark until where I stitched. And now I can open the zipper up and match up these points with the other side of my dress. So here I'm stretching the fabric, which I hope is gonna end up fine, but I'd rather have the two sides match up, which apparently is only if I stretch it. Here I'm going to do exactly the same with the satin and pull it out a bit, like so. And then I'm just going to match up the center back right here as well. And I'm gonna sew the zipper band here in with my zipper foot as well. Okay, and I'm gonna zip it up to check if it matches up. And as you can see down here, matches quite nicely. Up here matches perfectly. We're gonna work with this in just a second. Before that though, I'm going to put all of the skirt layers together separately. So what I am doing for that is going from the outside probably towards the inside. So I'm gonna put the embroidery together first, and I'm just gonna match up everything and just, you know, stitch that together like that. And then I'm gonna do the same to the satin, where I will have to cut towards, I will have to do that for every layer. So I'm gonna show you for the embroidery here. I'm gonna cut towards the stitching line of the zipper right there on both sides, so that I have room for that to fit together. The same I will have to do for every other layer as well. And now I can go ahead and put all of these together and have, you know, 3 separate layers that are just joined together at the zipper. And I'm also gonna cut off the selvage edge here because it just looks ugly. Okay, so now that all of the different layers are sewn together, I'm just gonna cut off the longer edges here, one at a time. I'm gonna put a zigzag stitch onto this as well to overlock this. And then up here, I'm going to cut down the seam allowance behind the zipper so that it's shorter than the zipper band, because then it covers it. And also the top here, I'm going to either bar tack down or I'm gonna do that by hand, depends. I'm gonna look at it in a second. I can also now go ahead and iron this and check if everything looks nice. And on top here, I'm going to fold this towards the inside and then fold it again. So now it hides nicely on the inside right here. I'm gonna put a needle in. I'm probably just gonna hand stitch it right here. And that's it already for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this kind of 2-in-1 project, dress and corset, and I really hope that it looks good. I'm excited to try it on. Haven't tried it on yet, and I'm excited to show you the final piece and of course all of your creations. If you use any of my patterns, you'll find a hashtag at the end of the sewing instructions, and also if you tag me on Instagram, where you should follow me by the way, I am seeing all of your creations. I'm commenting, I'm liking, I'm sharing and stuff, so please do share your creations and tag me so I'll see them, and follow me on my Instagram, as well as hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the notifications so that you'll be updated every time that I post. I post on Sundays, and in the meantime I post lots of reels on my Instagram and, you know, behind the scenes and stuff like that. So the usual, if you're interested in that, go check out the links in the description below. The pattern, as per usual, is already up on my Etsy. It is linked in the description box as well as in the pinned comment, so go ahead and check that out. That's the most direct way to support me and to keep videos just like this one coming. So thank you so much, and yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm gonna see you next Sunday. Bye guys!